Welcome back. Joe Biden's presidential campaign is not ready to say where the former vice president currently stands on past positions related to abortion restrictions. Last week, Biden abruptly dropped his long-standing opposition to federal funding for abortions due to what he said is an unprecedented attack on abortion rights. But it followed the blowback from an exclusive NBC report in which his campaign had affirmed that Biden was still in favor of the restriction. In an interview on MSNBC, Biden deputy campaign manager Kate Bedingfield would not say whether the new circumstances affect other positions Biden has held.
Does he now support a litmus test for a Supreme Court justice on the issue of abortion? Will he ask a potential Supreme Court justice how they'd rule on Roe? Does he now support it if it's an unprecedented crisis? I'm not going to get out ahead of the vice president. I think he has been very clear about is he not ruling it out anymore? I'm not going to get out ahead of the vice president on it. How about his votes 5 times in the 1990s, including 2 to override a Democratic president to ban partial birth abortion? Does he regret them or does he stand by them? He used to draw that line. Does he still draw it? I am not going to get out ahead of him on any of this. Is there any limit he would support? Third trimester abortion. Would he support a restriction on that? Steve, I don't know how else to answer the question. He is a supporter of a woman's right to choose. I am not going to get out ahead of him.
So, John Meacham, last week when we were in Normandy and I got the news that Joe Biden still supported the Hyde Amendment, which would ban taxpayer funding for abortions, I thought I saw the visage of Al Fromm and the DLC rise from the mist in the distance. But that's probably not the case, is it? We're not going to see that, especially on the topic of abortion, when it seems that Roe is so under siege right now, not only from Donald Trump, but also from governors across the country.
Yeah, it's the ever-expanding polarization, right? I mean, issues that at least had maybe a 60-40 consensus, which in America is pretty strong when you think about it. We're really a 51% country on a lot of issues. Right. But, this was sort of a 60-40. It's established, conservatives could say it's established law. There was something there. It seems to be hurtling toward the arena where we can't talk to each other about it. And I know just talking to younger women and in Tennessee, there's a lot of concern about what's going on in Alabama and the other states. And I think it's actually, I don't want to say a sleeper issue, that's not quite right, but it is a very live issue with folks who are unclear who their vessel will be to take on this president, whom, even if he's not directly responsible for what's going on in the states, is certainly the richest symbolic target.
Well, Mika, we have seen one state after another state after another state in the South pass very restrictive laws as it pertains to abortion, even in some cases not allowing a woman to have an abortion in the case of rape or incest. As we've been saying on this show repeatedly over the past 11, 12 years, an extreme position always causes an opposite lurch. And just a few weeks ago, when this debate really started heating up, I was talking about, half of Americans consider themselves pro-life, half of Americans consider them pro-choice. Those numbers are changing.
Yes, they are.
And they're changing rapidly. And the support for overturning Roe v. Wade has plummeted to its lowest numbers ever.
So over half of Americans say they are in favor of legalized abortion. But according to a new PBS NewsHour Marist poll, 57% of Americans polled said they self-identified as pro-choice, up 10 points since February, while 35% said they are pro-life, down 12 points. Several states...
By the way, just if you look at those numbers right there, a swing on an issue that has been set in stone for as long as it has, Mika, for you to see basically a net 20-point move, it tells you everything you need to know about the impact of these state laws that are being passed.
Several states restricting their abortion laws may be behind the recent shift, according to pollsters. On the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, 77% of Americans say they would like the Supreme Court to keep the ruling in place. Just 13% want it overturned.
Just 13%.
But they are divided on how limited the law should be. 26% said the court should keep Roe, but add more restrictions. 21% believe protection should be expanded. 16% said leave it alone. 14% want to keep Roe with some restrictions. And more than half of Americans said they would not vote for a candidate who would appoint a judge to the Supreme Court that would overturn Roe v. Wade. So, Adrian, is this an uncomfortable position that Joe Biden is in? At some point, does he have to do something to give some sort of clarity on the issue?
He does, Mika. I mean, this is not a position, the position that he shares right now or that he has on this issue is not exactly reflective of the majority of Americans or certainly the majority of Democratic voters. Look, the thing that I think candidates should realize, and we saw this certainly with Hillary Clinton when I worked on her campaign in 2016, people evolve over time on issues. So you can come out there and say, perhaps maybe at one point this was my position, but I have now shifted to this position, and here's why. Of course, we saw that happen a little bit with Joe Biden last week, but it was so hastily done within, 48 hours of him coming out and saying that he supported the Hyde Amendment. So, then he reversed course quickly, and it didn't seem authentic or credible or genuine enough to a lot of potential voters. So I imagine, number one, this is something that we will see and hear a lot about during the debates. And number two, I do think that he needs to clarify his position on this. Kate Bedingfield, his lead spokesperson, is a very good friend of mine. She's one of the best in this business. I think she did the best that she could in that interview with Steve Kornacki in terms of, trying to frame where he currently stands. But I hope that he will allow his staff to go out there, and he himself will go out there and create a little bit more clarity for voters in terms of where he stands on this.
So, Kat, if you look at what's happened over the past several months, not only in Alabama, but in Missouri, across the Deep South, and you look at the laws regarding abortion, the restrictive laws regarding abortion that are set up to specifically challenge Roe v. Wade and have Roe v. Wade overturned, it seems that both sides have gone to the barricades, and only 13% have gone to the barricades supporting these laws. I mean, Joe Biden, can he not say credibly, the facts have changed dramatically? I have to change with those facts.
Yeah, and come out on the back of the rulings in Alabama and Georgia and say Roe v. Wade now is under threat from an administration that has put it there and a Supreme Court that is leaning more conservative, and so it's incumbent on me to come out and support it. Abortion has always been tricky to poll because depending on how you ask the question, you can get more nuanced responses, and you see that even in this NPR poll as you go down into it. It's a little bit more fluid, but those shifts of, as you point out, 20 points effectively over the course of the last couple of months. That's an enormous shift. And for Democrats, here's the other thing.
Unbelievable.
This is being framed as an attack on poor women. So this is not just about abortion. This is also about economic and social issues, and particularly about poor minority women, which is what these laws, these restrictive laws in Georgia and Alabama, those are the people that they're really attacking. And that makes it even more urgent, I think, for somebody like Joe Biden to come out in support of those women, because he cannot be seen to be not helping them, because they're the ones that are being really hurt by the new restrictive policies.
Also on the Biden campaign, this moment is sort of illuminating, but a lot of Democrats have concerns here. It's not just the lengthy track record that you might have to defend, but this is a candidate who's run for president twice before. It hasn't gone that well, and it's been marked repeatedly by sort of mistakes like this. This was the night before they had a surrogate on television defending his position, and then they reversed it the next day when the heat really sort of increased. So, John Meacham, my question to you would be, do you see this as, for the Democrats out there who fear that Biden is the past generation's candidate, that he's too gaffe-prone or stumble-prone? Are moments like this, is this what gives them worry? Is this gives them concern and could give life to other candidates?
I suppose, but I think that's an elective concern in a world where Donald Trump is president of the United States.
But I think there's a different standard, right? That's the irony of Donald Trump. He gets away with things that other candidates don't get away with.
Do the rules not apply to anyone anymore, or do the rules just not apply to Donald Trump?
That's a good question. Gaffe. Look, Joe Biden can be an uneven public figure. He's been in the Senate since he was 29 years old. It's been, what, 50 years almost of public life. You know, you pretty much know what you're going to get, and that has to be part of the message here, which is, and maybe people don't want this, but maybe the Democratic base doesn't want it. But since we're really only talking about 5 functional gubernatorial campaigns, right? Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Florida, what am I missing? Michigan. Basically, it seems to me the former vice president's message is, I'm going to clean up this, you know, there's been a bar fight. I'm going to come in, I'm going to sweep up the long necks that are smashed along the floor and restore some order here. And I don't think he's arguing that he's not running a Jack Kennedy campaign.
He didn't really even clean it up. In other words, once you make that one switch, then you know there's a whole series of other questions coming, like what about third trimester, what about this, what about that? And they sent Kate Bedingfield out there without being able to answer any of those questions.
I agree. My only question is, these are rules that we talk about, and I understand the process points and all that. But basically, if you're looking at numbers like that, and he's basically gotten where he wants to be on a big thing, that's all anybody's going to hear for now. This is good to go to Joe's signal and noise thing, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but again, Donald Trump is president, so what do any of us know?
Well, and what do any of us know, Mika? You can go back to the South Carolina primary. Donald Trump, who spent his entire adult life being pro-choice, actually defended Planned Parenthood during the South Carolina primary, while slashing and burning George W. Bush, who at that time was very popular in the state of South Carolina. So you never know. I do know this, though. There are a lot of Catholic voters in Wisconsin. There are a lot of Catholic voters in Michigan, in Ohio, and in Pennsylvania who are Democratic, who are union members, who are Catholic, and who are pro-life. And I'm just saying the strategy for a primary may be different than a strategy for a general election. Oh, by the way, a lot of pro-life Catholics in the state of Florida as well. So you take those 5 states that John Meacham mentioned that are going to be the 5 most important states in 2020. You have a lot of union workers, a lot of Catholics, a lot of pro-lifers who want to vote Democratic, but sometimes can't because they're separated on social issues. That's the challenge, not only of the Biden campaign, but of the Democratic Party moving forward.
Well, and for Joe Biden on other issues that are controversial, I think of like gay marriage years and years and years ago, where he put his heart behind the message and the decision that he made on the issue. And on this one, he's going to have to figure out how to do that. Respect for women, listening to women, hearing them, and looking at the time that we are living in. And he needs to try and figure out how to tell people where he stands on this and not forget the part of it that makes Biden Biden and effective. And that is where he puts his own personal heart into the issue. And we haven't heard that. We've just sort of seen this weird flip-flop, which is unusual for such an experienced politician. Adrian Elrod, thank you very much. And still ahead, amid allegations of lavish spending, there is new reporting that the NRA directed money to board members, the very people tasked with overseeing the organization's finances.
I mean, you read this story and you wonder whether these people get their degrees from Trump University.
They sure sound like they did.
The hundreds of thousands of dollars and expensive Italian suits.
Really?
It's unbelievable.
The Washington Post's Carol Leonnig has details on this story next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.